In today's video, we're diving into the workplace jungle and we're going to talk about how do you deal with sneaky coworkers. So in this video, we're going to cover two main topics. We're going to talk about why are coworkers sneaky? Why do coworkers become this way? And then we're going to talk about how do you manage them? The tips and things that you need to handle a sneaky coworker. Let's go. Okay, let's cover the big question. Why do we have sneaky coworkers? Why does anyone have to act this way? It doesn't make sense to me. Typically, if you have seen that you have a sneaky coworker, or let's say a coworker who's trying to be sly or hide things behind your back, it's usually insecurity. It's almost always insecurity. And the insecurity comes from a couple different places. It can come from a lack of confidence in themselves, maybe something like imposter syndrome, or in other instances, it might be self-preservation, let's say, if they're threatened by you. And coworkers who are a little bit more sly or sneaky tend to be people's behaviors that develop over a long period of time. It's not something that you first start at an organization and you're like, oh, that person's acting a little weird. It's usually something where someone might be upfront kind to you, or they might be upfront superficial to you. And then as you start working with them, you notice that they keep information from you, they try to undermine you, they try to go around you. It's not something, there might be more there than just them being sneaky. But usually the why is, I'm going to put it in big letters, insecurity, because they don't know how to solve their own problems. And they feel like by being a roundabout or being sneaky or being sly is their way of somehow getting ahead or somehow preventing you from succeeding in whatever you're trying to do. Okay, so let's jump into the tips of how do you deal with a sneaky coworker. The first thing is to maintain a positive attitude. The easiest response to a sneaky coworker is be like, why do you have to be so weird? But that's actually counterproductive. The first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure, if you've identified someone who you think is going behind your back, as being sneaky, as being an underminer, you want to make sure that you are able to have your own, kind of remove your own personal bias from the professional workplace and say, this is just a job. I'm here to complete X amount of tasks and go home. This person isn't going to get me off my rocker, because you want to make sure that you are approaching the situation with as much mental clarity and, frankly, just objective fact or objective reality as you can, and not play into these games of insecure people. The second thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you're communicating clearly and directly. If you are in a situation where you are having to interact with this individual, the more ambiguity that you give a sneaky coworker, the more they may twist those words, they might use that as an excuse to not do what they're supposed to do. Sneaky coworkers, you have to be very clear with them what is in bounds and what is out of bounds from the project that you're working on. If it's an undermining behavior, it's the same thing. You just need to make sure that you're being very clear in your communication and very direct with what you want and why. And then making sure that everything is written down somewhere, and that people that need to know have a copy of the conversation, what was talked about, what's considered in bounds, and what is considered out of play. Which leads me to tip number 3, document everything. If this person is just being socially sneaky, if they're just being sly and insecure when they're around you and you don't actually have to work with them, this probably doesn't apply as much, but you want to make sure that you have everything documented and make sure that this is an ongoing, findable document. So it could be something that's an agenda sheet in your Teams meeting. Let's say if you use Microsoft Teams, it could be emails, it could be meeting notes that you have and that you send to your supervisor every time that you guys have a conversation. Whatever that looks like, making sure that you're documenting what was on the agenda, what was discussed, and what was the action items. At minimum, those are the 3 sections that you want to have when you're communicating and when you're keeping documents and records of what the conversation is and why. And if it happens, and this does happen all the time for sneaky coworkers, they might impromptu call you, and this is what happens to me. You get phone calls impromptu, and they say, hey, I just wanted to ask you about X, Y, and Z. Do I have approval on that? And it's usually the answer is yes, that's fine, but you don't want to give that verbally. You want to make sure you say, oh, that's a really great question. Send me that in an email and I will respond. Because if you give some sort of verbal confirmation, or you give some sort of, thing saying, oh, I want to do it that way, that person will take whatever you're saying and they will twist it, and they'll make sure that they are able to move forward, and they're going to put your name on the approval, even though you don't have anything in writing. So just make sure that you have everything documented. If you get an impromptu, you can always say, send me an email and I'll confirm it, or whatever that looks like. And the last tip that I have for you is be prepared to adapt. When it comes to sneaky coworkers, they're going to try a lot of different tactics to get what they want or to feel confident, either in making you look bad or in making themselves look better by twisting your words or making things look intentionally confusing. Make sure that when you are dealing with this person that you have a system of, I'm going to communicate to you clearly, I'm going to document everything we talk about. And then if things start to evolve, if this person becomes more manipulative or this person becomes more chaotic, you want to make sure that you are able to adapt and kind of hedge whatever they're trying to do, because typically insecure people will it's more like a fight or flight response where they will continue to fight either for their job, for their promotion, whatever it is that they think that they need to get, confidence, whatever that looks like. You're going to want to make sure that you are able to adapt and that you're reading the signs of this person and saying, okay, I'm going to hedge this professionally and make sure that I cut off all of these kind of tentacles that these people put out. It's really unfortunate typically if you have to work with a coworker who's really sneaky, and it's not always really fun to do, but the more professional that you are able to be about it and the more that you're able to actually have documentation of every single interaction, the more that CYA, as we say, the more that you'll be able to cover yourself and make sure that whatever ends up happening is not something that's your fault. And on that note, if you haven't watched this video about coworkers being threatened by you, I have some really good tips in there that tie in to this video as well. So make sure to check that out as well. And with that, I will see you in the next one.